Um, thank you, Aileen. Yeah, definitely turn that recording on before we get to the good stuff. Just a reminder to keep yourself muted during the presentation, and you can drop questions into the chat anytime, and we will ask those at the end of the presentation. I also want to mention our November meeting will be November 15th at 7 p.m. That will also be on Zoom. We are still working on the topic. Lynn's got some irons in the fire. So as soon as we have more information on that, we will share it. Also, this is really exciting. Mark your calendar for December 11th. We are going to have a holiday potluck around the bonfire. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe John Montgomery is hosting us at his place. Do I remember that correctly, John?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
And we're very excited to have you.
Thanks, John. And we will share more details on that as we plan that. We will next move into updates from our allied groups and our action committees. I'll ask first if there are any organizations on the meeting like JRA, Chesapeake Bay, Partnership for Smarter Growth, anyone who's joined us tonight who would like to provide an update. And maybe Chuck with American Battlefield Trust, you have an update maybe you'd like to share with the group?
Does that work? Okay. Yeah, Chuck Laudner, American Battlefield Trust, and also a committee still looking for some friends with Henrico Conservation Action Network, have been reaching out to a lot of our partner groups, and actually we've had some conversation with the Planning Commission and staff. Our goal is to put a plan forward that protects our battlefields and stitches together, so to speak, a route through, protect some battlefields that are already there and some that might be available in the future. But everything from cemeteries, working with groups, whether it's African-American cemeteries, wartime cemeteries, but also using these parcels and these pieces, if we can connect, that might work in with the rest of our goals as far as greenways, biking, hiking, open space. Anyway, that's the ultimate goal. We're working. I know that we meaning ABT, Battlefield Trust, and some of our other preservation friends have a meeting sometime in early November. Hopefully we get scheduled that we can circle back and cover some of the ground that we did last month. But so far everything has been really good. If there is anybody who hasn't been contacted by me or others that would like to be involved in the preservation component of our group here, please forward them on to me. I'll make sure. I know Lynn has my contact information. I really don't know how much my contact information has been shared around, but please do. More than happy to talk to anybody and how we can integrate all of our different goals.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chuck. Does anybody have any questions at the moment for Chuck?
Can I just, a little technical issue. Thanks, Lynn, for bringing that up. For some reason, Chuck's camera is showing up twice. It's Rosemary and then Chuck. So something's going on with one of the. Not sure. Is it Rosemary? Is it yours because it's a sharing?
Ours
is that right?
Ours is feeding back into our camera view from our end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to check. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, now we have two Aileen's, and now we have two Lynn's.
Yeah, so whoever is currently speaking will appear on Rosemary's screen.
Yeah. Mhm.
All right, well, is there anyone else from an allied group who would like to share any information tonight? If not, I know Aileen, you might have an update from Route 5 Corridor Coalition or Greater Sandston.
Route 5. We just, we're just continuing to have talks with, there's 2 developers wanting to come our way, and but there's actually a meeting tonight with one of them, a small development, and we have the and we're still in talks with the Acadia group. They have to come up with another meeting, a community meeting, so we'll see where that goes. And we did have Dominion reached out to us to talk and get to know the community a little bit more. We met with them. Randy was there, and Clyde, and Amy, and you know, they just told they just told us about purchasing the Brittleton solar farm, and so it was a positive meeting, and we're hoping to be able to, we told them that if they would be willing to look at the suggestions that were given to the owner prior to them, and they said they would look at it, and so that email should be going out this week. But other than that, that's it.
Thank you,
Aileen.
Aileen.
Aileen, if I can maybe add a comment,
Mhm.
but make sure I'm right when I say this. Dominion didn't seem to have a lot of excitement about the small solar sites. Is that correct?
Yeah, they weren't interested. They didn't seem interested either. I mean, that was the impression. And we just stuck to Verina, that there was no mention of White Oak on that. So yeah, we just stuck to we just wanted to hear what they had to say, you know, for us, and so it was short.
Thank you, Aileen. Do we have an update from Greater Sandston? Is that you, Lynn? Thank you.
It is. Thank you. We do have a new group out here. Sandston to the east. This community has not organized previously, seeing a lot of change, and our top issue still is the expansion of Dominion's transmission to feed White Oak Technology Park. And the next meeting that Dominion has called with an alternative route that the county helped us to secure, that might make a lot of people happier, is on November 17th. So it has really been good for us to stand together and to work with the county, and we'll give you an update next month. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. All right, well, we will move on to updates from our action committees. Beth, you are impressively multitasking, but is this a good time for you to give us an update on the Climate Action Committee?
Sure. I'm finished with the dishes, everybody. So tomorrow or yesterday, the Climate Action Group met. It was a really great meeting, and I think about 13 of us were there, and we came up with a plan to reach out to our supervisors and to schedule meetings for the week after Thanksgiving. We're hoping to request those meetings for that week. If anyone's interested in participating or wants, to take a look at the presentation or join us, I'll put my email in the chat. Thanks.
Any questions for Beth? All right, thank you, Beth. Quick update on the Comprehensive Plan Committee. We have not had a meeting yet, but I'm excited after tonight's presentation to put some framework documentation together and push out to those who are interested in participating on that committee, with the excuse me, a hope of gathering those who are available a week from tonight to have a quick Zoom roundup to talk about next steps. So if you are interested in participating on the Comprehensive Plan Action Committee, please drop that in the chat and I will make sure that you get information about that meeting. Tim, you spoke a little bit to Better Yards earlier. Anything else you would like to add? That might have been before most folks were on the line.
Well, again, we're going to meet. It's a small core group at first, 3 to 4 people, trying to put some objectives and boundaries around things and try to get a little bit organized. After we do that, Catherine L. and Catherine T. I know both of you are interested in this. I will get up with you. You will be on the committee. So let us get through this first phase, just to establish some kind of foundation and what we do and don't want to do. And then I will get up with you all. So again, we're starting up Thursday with the core group. Both Catherines, I will let you know what happened and then we'll bring you in the loop, okay?
Right, any questions for Tim? All right, thanks, Tim. Oh, I'm sorry.
One thing, I did watch Doug Tallamy's Homegrown National Park presentation. I don't know if any of you have watched that, but I will have a copy and I will send it out. But that's an excellent foundation for us to begin working on. The concept is very similar to Better Yards. I don't know how many of you know Doug Tallamy, but he is excellent. And the concept of the Backyard National Park, or what is it? Homegrown National Park, thank you, is a great start. So we'll be reviewing that at the very beginning to kind of see how we can build off what he's already done. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Tim. Well, with that, we will move into our featured presentation tonight, the Henrico County Comprehensive Plan, and welcome to Joe Emerson, Director of Planning for Henrico County. Please remember to keep yourselves muted during Joe's presentation. Drop your questions in the chat, and we will get to as many of them as we can after the presentation. Welcome, Joe.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Great, great. Well, thank you very much. I am Joe Emerson. I'm the Director of Planning for Henrico County. We're coming to you from our large conference room. So we're trying to get some things straight as we talk through this. Seth, are we at full screen on the slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
And I'm here with Seth Humphreys and Rosemary Deemer. But again, I want to thank HCAN for inviting me tonight. We are going to talk about our efforts to update the county's 2026 comprehensive plan, which will soon become the 2045 plan. There we go. At the end of the evening, I hope you'll have a good understanding of what a comprehensive plan is, how it's used, and why we update it. I'll also try to explain where we are in the current update process. Because I'll be covering so much information, I do appreciate you're holding your questions and putting them in the chat until the end. And then if we don't cover all your questions in the presentation, certainly I'll be happy to go back and try to answer them. To talk a little bit about what a comprehensive plan is, the plan is a long-range guide for physical development of land within a jurisdiction. Under the Code of Virginia, all localities are required to prepare and adopt a plan. It must assess existing conditions, growth trends, and the future needs of the community, and address land use, transportation, affordable housing, and broadband infrastructure. These plans typically have a 20-year planning horizon and include vision, goals, and objectives that reflect the community's values and needs. The process to update the plan may vary by locality, but it must include public input and hearings, review and recommendations by the Planning Commission, and review and adoption by the Board of Supervisors. The county may adopt amendments or update the comprehensive plan at any time by following the same procedure The state code does require that the plan be reviewed every 5 years. Since the adoption of the 2026 plan in 2009, we have amended the plan several times, but now we are reviewing the plan in its entirety. Our next plan will have a horizon of 2045. A key point to remember is that a comprehensive plan is a guide. It's not an ordinance such as a zoning code that must be strictly adhered to. You may or may not know that all land in the county has a zoning designation, which determines what land use activities are permitted on the property. Should a property owner wish to use the land in a way not permitted under the existing zoning, they may apply for rezoning. When a request is filed, one of the resources staff relies upon in drafting reports for the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors is the future land use designation of the property. However, it is only one of several factors in recommending approval of a rezoning. Other relevant information includes the existing zoning and prevailing land use patterns in the area. The overall layout is considered, as are the quality commitments proffered as part of the request. A staff report is prepared with a recommendation to the Planning Commission, who then holds a public hearing and makes a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, who ultimately makes a decision of approval or denial. The public is always encouraged to participate and comment and plays an important role in that process. Before continuing the discussion on the comprehensive plan, I'm going to jump off for just a second and explain the rest of the planning and development process. Following rezoning, or if a property already has the correct zoning, an applicant submits a detailed plan, either a subdivision, a plan of development, that are routed to multiple departments and agencies throughout the county and outside the county. It is during this phase that issues related to stormwater and utility extensions, water, sewer, and roads are reviewed. Throughout this process, county staff are ensuring the accepted proffers are addressed. We did have a question regarding proffers, so that's why I wanted to mention to you that this is one of the ways that proffers are enforced. I know there is ongoing interest in solar facilities, which require a provisional use permit and a siting agreement, which are similar in nature to the process for mineral extraction, which requires a reclamation plan and reclamation at the end of its use period. We had a question that asked, how would we follow up on solar facilities in 25 years that they're cleaned up? We'll follow up on them the very same way we follow up on the conditional use permits for reclamation sites. We follow them until the end of their life through the process, through all the county agencies. And then at the end, we make sure that the sites are cleaned up as per their siting agreements and their provisional use permits. Staff is always proactive and monitors these activities. Following the approval of the subdivision or plan of development, engineers review building plans to ensure building code requirements are met. Inspectors visit the site and monitor construction until occupancy occurs. Ensure proffers are adhered to. Final plans must be consistent before a certificate of occupancy is issued. So we make sure all the proffers have been met before a CO is issued for a housing development, an industrial development, a commercial retail development. Transfers of approval are required when a commercial site changes ownership, and building permits are reviewed for any tenant upfits. Projects are reviewed at that time for proffer compliance, and if complaints are raised or concerns are raised regarding any type of operation. So that is how we make sure that all proffers that are provided to us with zoning cases are met and monitored. Now we'll go back to the comprehensive plan. There are numerous reasons to update the plan. One is to accommodate for future growth. We need to identify appropriate areas for housing as well as employment opportunities. We also try to anticipate development trends as best as possible. Currently, the multifamily housing market is growing in the county with numerous requests for townhomes, condos, and mixed-use live-work units. On the other hand, since the pandemic, The office and retail markets have changed with more people working from home and shopping online. So those demands we have seen a reduction in. As a plan ages and development trends shift, it is not uncommon to receive rezoning requests that are inconsistent with future land use designations. This graph illustrates the number of rezoning cases approved since 2010 and whether they were consistent with the comprehensive plan. Remember, the current plan was adopted in 2009, and I do present this information to the board on a yearly basis so they can monitor what's going on with their land use plan. And if you look at these same slides on the 2010 plan, you'll see the same trend as a plan nears the end of its lifespan. This figure depicts what future land use designations were most inconsistent with approved rezoning requests. These last two slides again illustrate why the plan recommendation is just one of several factors used to evaluate development requests. As I mentioned earlier, population growth is one of many factors evaluated when updating a plan. The graphic on the screen now illustrates the county's population over the last 120 years. You'll note Henrico's population more than doubled between 1950 and 1960. While the rate at which we grow has slowed, we continue to see approximately 1% growth a year. The 2020 census estimated the county's population at 334,389 people. Our 2045 population is estimated to be somewhere close to 400,000. The next few slides will illustrate where residents have settled and what the density over the last 70 years has been. And you'll have a slide from 1960, and then one to 1970, 154,000, 1980, 180,000 people, 1990, 217,000, 2000, 262,000, and 2010, 306,000. You can see the western end of the county has filled over time. As you can see, the west end, Tuckahoe and Three Chop, are almost completely built out on this 2020 slide. In fact, those parts of the county have not just grown out, but are now growing upward as multi-story apartments, duplexes, and mixed-use developments are being built. The Brooklyn and Fairfield districts have also become denser. Libby Mill and the impending Green City development will further increase the densities in these areas. It is not surprising then that growth has started moving eastward. As we approach the 2026 planning horizon, it was time to consider a full update of the plan. And we brought on a consultant team of land use, transportation, recreation, and finance professionals to assist us. The graphic on your screen illustrates the 5 phases of the update process. Phase 1 was devoted to initiating the project. The team created a plan to manage the update and developed a project website. There were also many meetings with various county departments to identify their existing levels of service throughout the county. That phase was completed in May 2021. Phase 2 is devoted to analyzing trends and conditions. We have completed several reports and are finalizing others. We also engaged the county's residents via 2 statistically valid surveys, a community visioning event, and an online mapping exercise devoted to bikes and trails. The third phase, evaluating growth alternatives, will provide an opportunity to simulate different land use and development choices and determine how those choices might impact community character, transportation systems, and the county's fiscal health. There will be another opportunity for public participation during this phase of the project. In phase 4, the project team will take all of the outcomes of the first 3 phases and develop a complete draft comprehensive plan for public review. The final phase will entail adoption of the plan and public hearings before the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. The consultants will also provide an updated design guidelines manual, a public facilities and utilities manual, a fiscal model, and a list of potential zoning and subdivision amendments necessary to implement the plan. It is anticipated the process will be completed by late spring 2024. As I mentioned, we are in the process of analyzing trends and conditions, and as a result, there are numerous reports and studies being compiled. Following the release of the general census data, staff drafted a socio-demographic report, which provides basic information on population, households, income, and poverty, employment, and other characteristics of the county. Staff and the consultants also work to identify existing transportation conditions throughout the county. The report includes summaries of the road network, as well as transit, rail, and air service. An existing conditions report on our recreation and parks facilities was also completed. This document identifies the county's various parks and facilities and provides an inventory of amenities at each. Numerous sites were assessed to identify conditions which have a direct effect on the quality of programming and user experiences. Equipment, parking availability, ADA accessibility, and security were some of the categories evaluated. There have been multiple efforts to engage the public during phase 2. There were 2 statistically valid surveys conducted of county residents, as well as a community visioning workshop and an online mapping exercise devoted to bikes and trails. With the assistance of VCU's Survey and Evaluation Research Laboratory, we conducted 2 surveys of county residents. The first was a general survey intended to identify core values of the community, critical issues requiring planning solutions, and relative priorities among those issues. County's IT department provided Searle with 5,000 randomly selected residential addresses, 1,000 per district. Letters were addressed to Henrico County resident and contained an invitation to participate in a web-based survey. During the survey window, there was a postcard reminder, as well as hard copies sent to those who had not answered. The survey response rate was 25.8%, which exceeded the anticipated response rate of 20%. Of the surveys returned, 51.5% were completed online, and the remaining 48.5% were submitted via paper copy. Overall, 1,148 usable responses were received by January the 11th, 2022, when the web-based survey was closed. The survey response rate was again determined to be 25.8%, which did exceed, as I noted, the anticipated response rate of 20%. As you can see, the response rates by magisterial district ranged from 18.5% to 22.1%, which indicates consistent representation across the county. Among the first several questions, participants were asked, how would you rate the overall quality of life today in Henrico County using a scale of 1 to 5? The results show high levels of satisfaction with current quality of life. 77% gave positive 4 to 5 ratings. In addition to questions on land use, participants were asked their opinions on the provision of core county services, as well as funding priorities for a variety of services. Respondents were also asked about their current and desired use of 3 alternative modes of transportation: bicycling, walking, and transit. First, they were asked, during ideal weather, how often do you bike or walk to your travel destination? And how often do you use transit to travel to your destination? Respondents were given a choice of often, sometimes, rarely, and never, along with don't know, no opinion, and prefer not to answer. The Recreation and Parks Survey was conducted to better understand how residents feel about the county's recreation and parks services and future priorities. 4,000 randomly selected residential addresses were sent an invitation to participate in a completely web-based survey. In addition, residents who completed the community survey were given the opportunity to provide their input. A follow-up postcard and reminder letter were sent prior to the close of the survey. Overall, 778 responses were received, which exceeded the anticipated number of responses. The response rates for the Rec and Park survey were similar to those of the residents survey, ranging from 18.9% to 21.5%. Following questions about the use of facilities and frequency of visits, respondents were asked how satisfied they were with parks, trails, facilities, and programs offered by the Division of Recreation and Parks. Almost 80% of respondents were either somewhat or very satisfied. Respondents were asked to identify the 4 most important facilities to their household from a choice of 35. 3 of the top 4 responses were related to trails. The remaining 25 facilities have percentages lower than 15%. During the spring, the Department of Public Works posted a draft bike and trails map and encouraged residents and stakeholders to share their thoughts and ideas. Over 140 comments were received and are currently being evaluated. A community visioning event was held on March 23rd to help shape the vision and goals for the 2045 plan. Interested individuals could participate in real-time activities in person or online. For those not able to attend, the exercises were available for 4 weeks on the project website. Many of the asked questions correspond to those in the surveys. Following some background questions, participants were asked why they choose to live in the county. Almost half of all respondents chose high quality of life, family-oriented environment, extended family living here, and employment represented another 40%. The next question in the exercise was, what do you value most about Henrico County? Respondents were instructed to select their top 2 choices. Parks, recreation, and natural environment had the most responses, followed by a great place to raise a family. Participants were then asked to rate the overall quality of life in the county. Over 90% rated it at good, great, or superior. Respondents were asked what aspects of the county's established physical environment should be priorities for improvement or change. Adding sidewalks in older neighborhoods and commercial corridors had the highest response, followed by repurposing vacant and non-residential buildings, improving drainage to better manage stormwater in older neighborhoods, and dealing with neglected properties. Everyone was asked to select 3 community planning topics that should be priorities for the county. Protecting environmental quality and preserving open space in sensitive environmental areas were the top 2 selections. These were followed by providing bike ped amenities, supporting development of housing affordable to local workers, and managing where different types of new development will occur. Participants were also asked, where do you want the county to grow in your magisterial district? Almost half chose growth in already developed areas through infill and redevelopment. Close to 30% would prefer no new growth, but understood it cannot be completely stopped. Finally, participants were asked to use 1 to 3 words to identify the county's biggest challenge today. Approximately a quarter of the responses focused on auto dependency, public transit, and multimodal infrastructure. 20% were related to growth and development. The consultants have prepared a report on all the input received as part of the phase 2 efforts. Posted on the project website, it provides links to the results of the visioning exercise, 2 survey reports, and comments from the bike trails exercise. There are also summaries of various open-ended questions posed to the participants. If you're interested in digging deeper into that data, I would encourage you to go to the website and do so. There's a lot of interesting things in there. Using all 4 sources, there were key themes that were identified. They include strong support for more bicycle and pedestrian facilities, strong support for protection of environmentally sensitive lands, open spaces, and rural area, emphasis on value of providing a safe environment for residents, management of the location of future growth with a preference for redevelopment and infill, and support for addressing affordable housing needs. This input will be used to draft a new set of goals and objectives for the 2045 plan. It will also be used in phase 3 when we evaluate growth alternatives to develop the growth scenarios to compare to the existing 2026 plan. In phase 4, we will be working to develop the new plan. Existing land uses will be identified and reviewed, and alternative growth scenarios will be evaluated for developing recommended future land use designations. We'll also update current chapters of the existing plan and perhaps introduce new ones. Chapter 8 in the current plan currently provides guidance on protecting, preserving, and conserving the county's natural resources. In the 2045 update, this chapter will be more robust, covering broader environmental topics, including sustainability. We'll likely update the public facilities and utilities chapter to provide more guidance on solar facilities, similar to how the current plan addressed cell towers. Applications for solar facilities are new. They weren't being requested during the development of the 2026 plan. So we focused on cell towers because that was an issue we needed to address. Right now, we're following the Board of Supervisors' actions on the solar facilities, and we'll need to include a formalized policy in the new plan. So currently, we have somewhat of an informal policy governed by our zoning code and based on actions by the Board of Supervisors. We plan to formally address that in the 2045 plan. You'll recall the resident survey indicated an increased desire to walk, bike, or use public transit. The county is a strong supporter of public transit, as is evidenced by the fact we are currently the largest contributor to the GRTC transit system. In addition to a separate bikes and trails plan, our Department of Public Works Transportation Division is working to identify and program sidewalk retrofit projects across the county. Once we've completed drafting our chapters, we'll finalize the plan. Major components include the vision, goals, and objectives, a future land use plan, a major thoroughfare plan, a new bike trails plan, an updated recreation parks and open space plan, and accompanying implementation items. There will be additional opportunities for public input into the 2045 plan. Following a review of existing conditions and the identification of the remaining developable land, we'll simulate different land use and development choices. These alternatives will be shared with the community. We'll bring the entire plan back to the public once the vision, goals, and objectives have been drafted, chapters completed, and implementation measures identified. In addition to these opportunities, stakeholders will be able to submit suggested future land use designations for specific properties, as we did with the 2026 plan. We accept all input from the public. We like it in writing because we like to keep it in our files. It is also good for us to be able to refer back to that when we are putting together these scenarios and possible suggestions. At the Board of Supervisors retreat in December, we'll be presenting some of the potential opportunities we've identified to involve more of the citizenry in the planning process. Stay tuned for that. We plan to roll those out. We have plans for additional public input and ways to engage the citizens. And we want to present that to the Board of Supervisors, and then we will implement it after we discuss it with them at their retreats. Finally, we were asked to address several topics important to HCAN. The first was regarding identification and preservation of high-value farmlands, forest, and historic landscapes. As was done for the 2026 plan, again, property owners, citizens, and stakeholder groups like HCAN can send written suggestions of land uses for properties they are interested in. The sites will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. We'll use criteria from various state agencies, such as the Department of Agriculture, Conservation and Recreation, Forestry, and Historic Resources for guidance on prime farmland, timberland, and other resource protection. Regarding where to build and what to preserve, there are 6 different land use groups with over 20 classifications currently in the 2026 plan. Contained in those classifications are open space, environmental protection, and prime agriculture. Those categories will continue to exist. So while I know what your thoughts are, we always hear about where things are being built and where things can be developed. But the plan is holistic. And if you look at it, it does encompass all these topical areas. It's just the areas where the development pressure is being put forth is what you'll hear a lot in the media and a lot of discussion. And I think that takes away from the fact that the plan also does address other issues. Now, all those 20 classifications will carry over in those 6 different land use groups that are in the 2026 plan. I fully anticipate there may be more categories and classifications with 2045 as we work our way through the development of it. We were asked whether special focus areas not yet studied will be carried over and included in the 2045 plan, and whether nominations of new ones would be considered. All of our existing focus areas will be reevaluated and their relevance. And of course, some of them we haven't gotten to. We haven't been able to do all the studies. We always have more ideas and plans and things we would like to do than we have time to do. But we need to reevaluate those, prioritize them appropriately, determine whether or not they're still relevant. And yes, current trends will be examined. We'll look at new focus areas. And if you have any ideas of focus areas that you would like examined, we would like for you to submit those to us. For those areas not yet studied that are experiencing development pressures, we will use the identified characteristics, activities, and action recommendations as we review the development proposals. Again, residents are encouraged to provide suggestions and reasoning for new focus areas. Trees were also a popular topic. We were asked how owners of mature forest will be incentivized not to cut them down. And honestly, silviculture is an allowed use and is permitted in agricultural areas. It's something that the Department of Forestry encourages to maintain a healthy forest. The county does support conservation easements. Should a property owner wish to preserve trees, farmland, or open space, they have the opportunity to ask whether or not that proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan. We review these on a regular basis. And then, of course, they have the ability to restrict that land as they deem appropriate. If they wanted to protect a mature stand of trees into perpetuity, they certainly could do that through a conservation easement or restrictive covenants or however they chose to do it. That would be allowed in the agricultural areas. Regarding zoning regulations to plant trees, Article 5, Division 2 and 3 of our zoning code address required open space and tree protection. The ordinance requires a minimum of 35% of plant materials on site when planted be native species. Invasive species are prohibited. Plan development master plans and developments within form-based alternative overlays include standards for street trees, as do parking lot designs. We also require a tree survey for much of our developable area where any trees 6 inches in caliper or larger have to be counted. And those that come down, unless they're in easement areas or other required areas that have to be cleared for development, we do request that those be replanted. With that, that completes our presentation this evening, and I'd be happy to answer questions. As I noted, I've got Mr. Humphreys and Mr. Deemer here with me. So between the three of us, hopefully we can address your questions. If we can't, we certainly will take them down and get back to you with answers.
Thank you so much, Joe. We have several questions in the chat. Do you prefer to go through those yourself, or I'm happy to pull them out and ask them?
We can go through them. Let's see
Okay.
where Seth, can you?
All right, first one I've got here is how can you be sure solar developers will not declare bankruptcy for the responsible entity at the end of life of a solar industrial facility to escape liability for cleanup?
Well, I don't think we can be sure of that of any development. And you can require financial sureties. I can tell you after my experiences through the Great Recession, those are not always the fail-safe protection that you would hope they would be. We do have siting agreements. We have our provisional use permits. We have been very successful with reclamation where mining extraction has been conducted. And I think we just have to have some faith in the process, and that nothing's certain, but I feel comfortable that we'll be able to get those cleaned up in the future. As comfortable as I can on any of these other practices that we and other localities and even the state and federal government engage in.
Okay. After an occupancy permit is issued, are developments, especially commercial and industrial, inspected on occasion to assure sustained compliance to landscaping requirements?
We do on occasion. We have what's called and I noted it earlier, a transfer of approval. So if it changes hands, if ownership changes, which a lot of these warehouses and things and other retail entities, they're owned by one entity and then leased to the user. And sometimes you'll see these real estate trusts, they'll sell those. And to use an example here in the county, Liberty Real Estate Trust sold a number of warehouses a few years ago. We went through every one of those, pulled every plan of development before we approved a transfer of approval, and made sure all their landscaping and everything was in place as it was required and approved. We do get complaints from people on occasion. They'll tell us that a landscaped area has dead vegetation. We'll go out and check that, have that replanted. We do have a community maintenance division of the county that inspects these sites periodically. So we stay on it as best we can. Certainly we're dependent upon people that have eyes on the community beyond us and will call us and tell us. But we do follow up and keep an eye on shopping centers, on industrial projects, in any of those things, even in our residential areas where there are required buffers and things like that. We will follow up on those and make sure as best we can that they're being maintained appropriately.
Okay, next question. It was stated that the population is growing by 1% per year. What percent of county land is being moved from agricultural or forest or undeveloped to developed every year?
I would have to go back and pull that number. We can pull that out and tell you the answer to that. But what I would tell you is a great amount of our development is now occurring in redevelopment areas. Innsbrook, Westwood, the western end of the county. You've seen a lot of redevelopment in those areas, and that's where a large majority of your development is occurring. We do have the stats though, and we can look at the conversion rates and we can answer that question for you.
Okay, here we go. Please show us the 2026 future use map and explain how it has affected development. Let me go back.
I would note to you while Seth's scrolling through the slides, as far as land that has transitioned, it's been mostly office designated land that has transitioned, and we have seen the demand for office developable land to drop significantly. So we've seen a lot of office land transition. Some of the things that caused the jump in the chart are the rezonings in Innsbruck from office to urban mixed use, where other uses, both retail and residential, are being added to those parking areas along with structured parking while preserving all the green space that was in Innsbruck. We haven't really taken out any of the green space in Innsbruck. There was one green field that has developed in Innsbruck that was on the corner of Knuckles and Sadler, but that was always slated to be developed. The other areas that were preserved with walking trails and open space in Innsbruck have not been touched. As far as the land use map, as I noted, the land use map is a guide. I think if you think back to the transition chart I showed where some of the land had converted, as I noted, the majority of conversion was office. That's occurred in the western end of the county and some in the Brooklyn district and Tuckahoe and of course Three Chopt. The map has guided growth for the great extent that it should. We're reasonably consistent with it. We are getting near the end of its lifespan. And as the old adage is, when the plan starts getting long in the tooth, I guess, you begin to move away from the plan in terms of decisions because the growth trends have changed. But I think the plan has also worked well in terms of where we can support and say conservation easements are consistent with the land use plan with a large area that's designated agriculture in the eastern end of the county, where the majority of our conservation easements are located.
Next question. Where can we find a list of current unstudied special focus areas?
Well, I think what you need to do is that you need to go to our website, look at the 2026 land use plan, go to chapter 12. What is it? 7. Chapter 7 has the action plan. I thought it was 12.
12 has the action plan.
12 is the action plan.
But 7 has.
7 is the focus areas. 12 has the action plan. If you go and look at the focus areas, you can tell from that easily the ones that haven't been completely addressed. And many of those weren't necessarily intended to be studied further. If you go to chapter 12, which I was mentioning at the beginning when I started to answer this question, you will see that we identified and prioritized action items from within the plan of things that needed to occur. And we also prioritized and assigned department responsibilities to certain studies. So if you look at chapter 12 and look at chapter 7, you can see where they fell within the priorities. The focus areas also contain vision statements for the focus areas and also contain some guidance for the focus areas. And some focus areas are relatively small and some are larger. For instance, an Azalea Mall is more of a site than it is an area. So they range in size and in relative prioritization of their importance in the county.
Are there any localities similar in size and focus to Henrico County that go beyond allowing conservation easements and related restrictions to support conservation to incentivizing conservation practices?
There are localities that allow transfer of development rights and things of that nature that incentivize or allow the selling of development rights and transferring them to other areas. That's a very complicated process. I can only think of 1 or 2 localities in Virginia that's even tried it. They are very complicated. Their success rate has been minimal. And you have to designate receiving areas and you have to have sending areas and receiving areas. And those just get very complicated. Off the top of my head, that would be the only thing I can think of as far as an incentive to not develop your land. I would think conservation easements are an incentive because of tax credits that you get for those.
Where can citizens access the survey results and analysis?
They're posted on our website,
On the project website.
on the project website.
Can we go back to that slide about land use deviation and just get an overview, please? Hold on one second. Yes, it's this one.
Actually, the one before is the one I was speaking of. Yes. Thank you. So just looking for a just quick explanation, I guess, of what the acronyms are at the bottom and how they relate to the data shown.
Sure, the numbers that run up the side are your numbers of rezoning cases. Coming across the bottom, those are your land use categories. Commercial arterial, commercial concentration, environmental protection area, government, light industry, multifamily residential, office service, office, prime industrial, rural residential, SMX, semi-public. SR1 is a residential category, single-family residential 2. TND is traditional neighborhood development. UMU is urban mixed district. UR is urban residential, which would be your multifamily categories. So based on those charts, and I mentioned this to you a few minutes ago, where the most approvals have been made that were not consistent with the plan is in the office designated category, which makes sense based on the age of the plan and the fact that there's very little, if any, demand for the development of new office at this point in time.
So the categories along the bottom are what it's being rezoned to.
They're land use categories. The rezonings were not consistent with the plan's recommendations in those
Okay.
categories.
So these are the categories where the land would have started off in these categories and then
Correct.
rezoned to something. Okay,
It
thank
was
you.
rezoned to something else. And the area of largest inconsistency is office.
Okay,
Again, understandable because of the length, the age of the plan, and the current development trends. There's not a big demand for office.
This was the recommendation of those properties in the comprehensive plan. So it could have started off as A1 or agricultural or any other district and ended up as residential, but it had been recommended for office. So that's where the difference lies, and that we can do this.
This is not zoning. What Seth just mentioned to you is zoning. This is a land use category. Zoning underneath it could have been something different. I think that's what Seth was trying to tell you. This is a transition in the plan. It may have been designated office. It could very easily have been agricultural. It could have been residential or some other zoning category underneath it. It was recommended in the land use plan for office. When it was rezoned to something other than office. It could have gone industrial. It could have gone residential. It could have gone urban mixed use. The office category is primarily impacted by the changes in Innsbrook. Because it was office designated and then it went urban mixed use. So that's where it's changed. Those are your big ones.
thank you so much.
I was going to read the next question. Can we, Henrico County, lobby the state SEC to require Virginia Dominion Power Center to have a role in the reclamation process for solar facilities?
I think we do have a role. Well, let me make sure I understand that. What was that again? Can we lobby to require Dominion Power? Well, the only one, the largest one in the county right now, Bridleton, the most recent approval, Dominion does have a role in because it has been assigned to them. They are now the owner of that. and the siding agreement was assigned to them. So they'll be responsible for cleaning that up at the end of its life.
All right, next one. Virginia Wetlands Watch warns of coastal flooding risks in eastern Henrico at the sea level as the sea level rises. Henrico is addressing stormwater problems. Is coastal flooding being studied and addressed in the comp plan?
We haven't gotten to that part of the comprehensive plan yet. Certainly we'll probably take some notice to it. We have some tidal water in Henrico, James River below the fall zone. I'm not sure exactly what the rising water or the rising water level really means to us at this point, but that's something that we would take a look at.
Next question is, can you look into increasing the percent of native plants and buffers, et cetera, from 35% to 70% as advocated by Doug Talamy, also targeting high value natives is important? Would you consider working with Virginia Master Naturalists?
One of the problems that we run into with requirements of native plants is that the local nurseries don't stock enough of them. And when the development community goes to try to buy these plants to install in their buffers and their planting areas, they can't obtain them. Certainly we'll work with whatever number is appropriate. We can look at that as we develop the comp plan. Right now, the 35% number is what is contained in the zoning code.
There's a photo. Okay, a comment about the pinelands. We'll take that under consideration. Thank you. Consider Virginia Beach's purchase of development rights program. It does not have sending and receiving areas. We will look at that.
And we'll take a look at that. I don't know that I understand that program that way.
Thank you for your time tonight. One focus I hope we can encourage is to address agricultural and forest, not as undeveloped, but as developed land, but as developed agricultural and forest. It is possible to have a seat at EDA for agricultural and forest production.
That would, the EDA appointments are made by the Board of Supervisors, if that's the question. Certainly, I think that's an industry. I don't disagree. Agricultural and forestry uses are an industry, and that's why timbering is part of that. Timbering and reforestation. So it's a viable lifestyle and income producer. So it depends on the overall numbers in the county as we move through it, how many people are actively involved in how it's addressed. But we can look at that.
All right, I think we've reached the end of our questions. Joe and Seth and Rosemary, thank you so much for your time tonight. This was great information. Really appreciate your patience with all the questions. Thank you so much. I'm sure you will be hearing more questions from us and more comments certainly as we move through the public comment process. But again, we really do appreciate the time that went into creating this presentation and addressing the questions that we had supplied ahead of time and addressing everyone's questions tonight. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Again, mark your calendar for our next meeting on Tuesday, November 15th, topic to be determined. Mark your calendar for December 11 for our holiday gathering. And also please take a minute before you log off to note in the chat if you're interested in participating in a particular action committee. Thank you all so much. Lynn, anything you would like to add before we close out? All right. Well, thank you all so much, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Wow, I'm glad we recorded that. Lots of information, lots of really good information.
Lots of
Hopefully we
really,
can
really
post
good
Hold
that.
on, let me stop recording. Hold on.
Let's